Well, I achieved a grade 2 in English. I thought, I can do that. And I was working in the owner drivers division. Are you dealing with?
Thank you for coming in, Simon. Simon's going to tell us all about Hornby, how it started, how you got into Hornby, where you was working. Originally, where was you working in?
Well, I mean, if I look back, I probably only had about 5 employers. When I left school with basically no qualifications, we had this thing called GCSEs, which were meant to be equivalent to GCEs, but instead of sort of failing, you had these grades. But grade 1 was always meant to be GCE standard.
Okay.
Well, I achieved a grade 2 in English. Maths was somewhere down as 5, and geography I think was 3. History was 3 as well. So I left school, and in those days, I've always felt being lucky, and I think people in my generation were lucky. I had the choice of 3 jobs. First one was I was living in Northampton at the time. Now Northampton, famous for boot and shoes, or certainly was then. And I had a job offered to me at Mansfield, shoemakers. The other one was with an engineering company that did die-cast moulding and things like that. Bit hot, bit sweaty, bit dirty. I'm not really keen on that one. And then the other one was a short-term, temporary clerical assistant at the local Inland Revenue.
Right, lovely.
It was. My mother, because it was short-term, temporary clerical assistant. So, but my mother thought, oh, that's good. You'll get a pension for that.
Yeah, sounds
and I'm thinking, what, in 50 years' time, if I'm still here? But, my mum was my mum. And I sort of drifted into that. I thought, I can do that. Which I did do. And I did go from short-term temporary clerical assistant to temporary clerical assistant. And eventually, when I passed an exam, one of the very few I have passed, I became a clerical assistant. But I stood that for about 3 years. Now, one of the things you learn when you're working with the Inland Revenue, you did in those days, you did have a lot of face-to-face meetings with people who hated you. They absolutely hated you. And, we would have these countertops, which were quite deep, deliberately, and quite high, deliberately. And, you'd have to talk to people why they have been sent this particular form, and so on and so forth. And it was all, you had to do it all basically surreptitiously, because you would get indications from all sorts of saying this person's earning money and all the rest of it. Yeah. So, but talking to people, and if you can survive that, you can survive anything. So I went from there and worked for a company called Mixed Concrete, which, as the name suggests, was ready mixed concrete, and that was in a local company in a place called Billing, just outside Northampton, which was great because at that time Northampton was one of these expanding towns, so concrete was in great demand. And I was there for probably about 3 years. And then I was on a management course.
Doing a similar thing?
Well, what it was, I was dealing with what you call owner drivers. So you'd have these guys who work for the company as drivers, driving either aggregate lorries, dirty great big lorries, or ready-mix lorries.
Yeah.
And I was working in the owner drivers division. Now you're dealing with people, and I was responsible for getting their maintenance bills in and then making sure they were aware of what it was all about. So you're talking, and sometimes, they would say, well, I didn't have that work done. And then you used to have to prove that you did. Now, you're talking in those days, big money, because tyres, even in those days, for those lorries, were over £100 each,
right,
which was
a lot
big.
Of money,
and I'm talking sort of late 60s.
Yeah.
So huge amount. But you also learned that diesel lorries don't have spark plugs.
Oh, okay.
And so you would get these invoices in from the maintenance department, and more than once you'd say, 4 spark plugs or 6 spark plugs. It's a Foden, it's diesel, don't have it. So it was so you're dealing again with people and their money, and I've seen really red hot, for want of a better word, socialists, really, for the working man, when they get a sniff of being an owner-driver, i.e. working for themselves, and the money they're earning is theirs, you've gone right over. So, but it was fun, and
that would have been a big time for unions.
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, big.
Yeah.
But because the owner-drivers weren't in the union.
Yeah.
They worked for themselves.
Yeah.
So it became a dirty word. But there were great characters. There's one or two who were fabulous characters. And I tell you, there's nothing nicer than sitting high up in a Foden 8-wheeler or whatever it was, 10-wheeler, and you're looking at the world and you're belting along the motorway. One of those things. It was fun. Anyway, so I enjoyed the business. I was put on a management course. And then I had known since moving to Northampton, when I was, 13, 14, I met up with a guy called Nick Evans, whose father happened to own a model shop. And, of course, during the summer months, we would be in and out of that shop. And we'd have lots of fun. We'd be playing with steam engines. We'd be playing with air pistols.
So you enjoyed all that sort of?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, but never. When you're 13, 14, you're not necessarily thinking of what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Certainly not a career,
I think it stopped going in the army. I think, but I kept. We were good friends. We had a similar sense of humour. Our brothers had an interest in trains. I didn't. I was a mocker, and so was Nick. We were into the Beatles. They were into the not the New Faces, the New Seekers.
Okay,
a little bit chalk and cheese. But kept in touch, and it was about 1971 when sadly Nick's father passed away. Now by that time Nick was working with his dad. He was a partner in the business, and Nick obviously couldn't run the business on his own, and he wanted somebody to trust. So he asked me, would I come in and work the business with him? To which I thought about it. My mother said, business and friendship doesn't really work, but I did like the idea. And so that's where I went. And again, you're dealing with people.
Where was you working before that then?
Before that, I was working for the mixed concrete.
And then you went from there
From there, I then went to the model shop.
Oh, right. Big change.
Yeah, massive. Because, I never thought of myself as a shopkeeper. But it was one of those things, you're dealing with people's hobbies, their passions. You're not selling them tins of beans.
Yeah.
You're selling them basically what I've always said. You're selling them happiness. You're selling them something they really enjoy. Nobody would walk out of that shop with something that they've just bought, even if it was a tube of glue or a piece of balsa wood, and be miserable. I've had to buy this. No.
You're dealing with people who that is their hobby.
That is their hobby.
They like it.
That's their pastime. They enjoy them.
Yeah.
You don't have a hobby to be miserable.
Yeah.
Even if some of these people who play golf for a hobby think they get a bit miserable, which is something I never understood. So, I was there 7 years, and you learn the business, but it was a great 7 years because it was at a time when things were changing in the hobby industry. Things were moving along. If I sort of focus it on model railways, for example, you had Hornby were the main players.
Were you selling Hornby in that shop at the time? You were?
Yeah. But there were smaller companies as well.
Yeah.
But Hornby was the big cheese. That was the one everybody, red and yellow boxes. So, but it was at a time when you had what you had with model railways in those days was the key was the word model. So you'd have toy trains.
Yeah.
Where you'd buy a train set and you'd put it on a board and then you'd have those people, a smaller size market, who would buy a locomotive, a model loco, and then want to enhance it. And there were smaller companies around that produced these little bits and pieces that you could stick on to your Hornby loco and enhance the detail, because Hornby weren't of that ilk,
Were they not doing that sort of thing?
Well, they produced locomotives, but
not the scenery.
They did some scenery later, but they had the track, they had buildings, etc. But it was very much focused on a company that made jolly nice toys that could be made into models if so wished. So that's basically what it was.
Yeah.
But as I say, there are lots of smaller garage little companies providing these odd bits and pieces. And then along comes the two companies exactly the same year in the mid-70s. There was Airfix. Everybody knew Airfix. They make plastic kits. Of course they do. But they'd been pestered to, why don't you go into model railways? Why don't you go into making trains? There's only Hornby, and the market's massive. And then there was another company called Palitoy, which was part of General Mills. Palitoy made Action Men.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and they came into the market with a whole series of trains. And these were made in China.
Oh, did they? I didn't realise
At the time,
that.
Hornby were making in Margate, in a factory that was opened in 1954. Custom built for it. And Hornby was still producing models that were moulded in coloured plastic, a little bit of printing on them, probably hot foil printing, that sort of thing. Whereas these Chinese models came in, and there was something about them. They had that model feel about them, that detail feel. Even down to the wagons and the printing on the wagons, the names, sharp, crisp. The locomotives, excuse me, lots of detail. And again, the printing, they were using a process called tampo printing, which you may or may not be familiar with. Quickly, tampo printing. Basically, you have a metal plate. You photo etch that plate with what you want to put onto the locomotive, onto the model. Okay. That plate is then put onto a printing machine, a tampo printing machine. And basically what it is, you have the model, you push it onto a holder, and then the printing machine wipes the ink over the etched plate. A pad comes down, silicon pad, picks up the print, moves over and pops it onto the model and back again.
Clever.
And they had, Hornby were only just starting to fiddle with this, but these people had it down pat. You could read, you could get a magnifying glass and read what was on this specific nameplate.
Wow.
It was on it was on a Royal Scot loco. But it gave, and you think, this is amazing. Now, there were two companies involved, as I said, but they over-egged it. there was they it was as if somebody kept their finger on the production button, and it just became too much, and eventually Airfix tried. Hornby came in, they upped their game, but Airfix got into trouble. Palatoy got into trouble, so they disappeared, which basically left Hornby there again. But Hornby read the signs, but it takes, you can't just turn it on like that. It took time for them to start to think more model-fied, okay, and invest in the printing methods. But they still, on a steam locomotive, they have what you call boiler bands.
Right.
And these boiler bands, if you look carefully, are probably made up of three individual lines, which, for the sake of argument, would be orange, black, orange. Well, Hornby didn't have the technique to do that. So they used to have these lovely ladies sitting in a row with these bodies and a mapping pen.
God.
And they were brilliant, because they would go, whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
No, whoop. We would show these models around the factory. They'd see these ladies doing it, and they'd be blown away.
Yeah.
I can't do that. But of course, these ladies have been doing it for years.
Yeah.
You know, they had a steady hand.
Yeah.
They certainly didn't have a drink problem.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that was the thing. Now, the industry, or if you like to call it that, was changing. I was with the model shop for 7 years, and so you learn a lot. You talk to people, you get a feel for what they're interested in, and so on.
When you was in that model shop, were you selling those other products?
Yeah,
you were. So you had all the, so you saw what their products were like against
Hornby. Oh
Hornby.
yes.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, and it could be disputed, but this is certainly how I found it, that some of the locos where the printing was so good, but the mechanics, the loco would run not so well, like a bag of nails.
Yeah.
Where the others, where the printing wasn't so good, the other make, but the motors did run well. You see, and it was a very, very interesting time to in the industry, because then if you look at model aircraft, we then had electric was coming in to the market.
Yeah.
You know, but Nick was a control line that was using diesel, or what they call glow plug engines, which ran on a mixture of methanol and castor oil.
Yeah.
And he was champion at control, and then he went on to radio control, because we used to go, you know, in those days shops used to close on a Thursday.
I know.
So Thursday afternoon, Nick and I would go off with his radio control, and we go fly his model, which was, you know.
So you were very
brilliant.
into models.
Loved it. And you know, you'd make models for the shop window and things like that. But you know, you learnt that, you know, you took your time, because this was a piece of work that was going to be in the window, and you wanted to sell from it. So there was no point in doing a rough job. You had to do a really nice job. So that was patience. But invariably,
was you making models yourself at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I because at that time I was courting and you know, saving to get married.
In between.
In between. But what would happen is, we would perhaps have a model that, you know, an Airfix model that was sticking, not selling so well.
Yeah.
So you'd make one up, put it in the window, and that would be a catalyst to sell them.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, that's what you would do. I can't say I was doing it every week, but of course, you know, getting engaged and saving up and all the rest of it, it was just, that was where all the focus was. But I got married, and I lived in what they call St. Jimmy's End in Northampton, which was the opposite side of town from where I worked. But my wife worked in the Inland Revenue, so we would walk so far, she would go to the tax office. I would carry on walking up the Wellingborough Road, and we would open at 9, close at 6, probably have an hour for lunch, and walk back.
How old was you then?
I was doing that. Now, I was in the model shop for 7 years. And I began to think, am I going to be doing this for the rest of my life?
How old were you then when you got married and everything?
Got married when I was 23.
Right, so you're still young, man.
Yeah. I went to the model shop when I was 21.
Right.
I was there for 7 years. Now, Nick and his future wife would go off around about Easter time, go walking. And so they go to the Lake District or Matlock or somewhere like that. So I'd be in the shop on my own. And it was on one morning when the post comes, I open up a letter. Well, it was the invoice for some product we'd had from a company called Hammond Morgan. And Hammond Morgan were manufacturers of train controllers and transformers.
Okay.
And in this well established, these were the preferred controllers. You wouldn't have. We would sell Hornby because Hornby trains obviously needed Hornby electricity. Yeah. But what we did, we'd try and sell them Hammond Morgan. It was a little bit cheaper, metal bodies as opposed to plastics, so a bit more durable. And to be honest, they were, they could go through the Third World War and come out still working. Right. They were really strong stuff. So in this invoice was a letter from a gentleman called Stan McCullum. He had the company itself had recently been bought by Hornby, and they had taken on. They had 2 salesmen, and they wanted another 2. And this letter said, if if we knew anybody, would be interested, then do get in touch. And I read it, and I thought, you know what? I fancy a bit of that. That sounds good. I know the industry. I know these controllers. I mean, these brilliant controllers. And, I fancy a company car.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, if another day, if he was there, you might not have opened that letter.
Correct. It is a sliding doors moment.
Is, absolutely. Yeah.
It really is. So, I'll cut a long story short, because it still wasn't plain sailing. But eventually, I was offered the job as they call them area managers. Most people call us reps. And I was given the area north of the Thames, right up to Birmingham, and off to the Shropshire.
Right.
Shropshire.
Quite nice.
So I had a big chunk.
Yeah.
I really wanted Lincolnshire, but couldn't get Lincolnshire. Anyway, and I enjoyed it.
Big change for you.
It was a massive change, and it was a change. I remember, I went for the interview, second interview, and my wife's family at that time, my wife then wife family were up in not Newcastle, Sunderland, and we had arranged to go up there. But of course, the interview was while we were up there. So I hired a car, went up to Sunderland, had a day in Sunderland, drove back, stayed in Northampton, and then the next day it was the interview. So I drove to the interview. Nearly lost it. I got I got so to the point where I wanted this job.
Yeah.
And I just overdid it. And, it just, the interview just did not go right because I fumbled, I muffs lines, it was embarrassingly bad. But Stan said to me, "You impressed me when I saw you in Birmingham. You're not impressing me now."
That was honest.
No, Stan was everything but honest.
Yeah.
And no, he was honest. Sorry. And I said, I'm so sorry. I just want this job so much, because I know I can do it. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to leave it with my secretary, and she'll talk to you, and then I'll come back and see what she says. So he left, and I got chatting to the secretary, and we had a good chat, and we were talking about anything and everything.
Yeah.
She was telling me that Stan was could be a challenge and all the rest of it, but he was fair and so on. And so we got on. Anyway, he comes in, and he said, "So, what do you think?" And she said, "Yeah, I like him." Yeah, and he said, "Why?" He said, "He makes me laugh."
That's it, isn't it?
Got the job.
Yeah, great.
Got the job. Anyway, so I'm on cloud nine. I'm absolutely beside myself. And I drive back up the A1, right up to Sunderland, speak to my wife, and I said, look, I've got the job, but you know what I'm like? It's 100%. I can't do just part job. It has to be 110, if not more. I said, so if you don't want me to do that, if you know,
Yeah.
I won't. Now. Tell me now, because there's no going back. I said, no, I want you to do it, which is basically, which I did. And
the end of your marriage.
And it basically was the end of the marriage, because it was, Hornby. Again, the industry was going through interesting times, because we're now. I started with Hammond Morgan in '78. And of course, this was just about the time that electronic games started to come. Now, if you
that's a difficult time.
It was a very difficult time because, up until then, and this isn't being sexist. This was what the world was like.
Yeah.
Hornby made boys' toys, right?
Yeah.
Pedigree made girls' toys. They made Cindy and so on. So this was, very much a male-orientated thing, and. In those days, what do you want for Christmas? Well, roller skate, train set, scale electric set, bike.
Yeah.
Those were the key things. Come 78 onwards, you were then starting to get these electronic games coming in, the Simon games and Space Invaders and things like that. And all of a sudden, train sets, wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And it was struggling.
Because it would be a thing parents would be looking to buy presents at Christmas.
Yeah.
And where train set would be the obvious, suddenly that changed.
Yeah.
And the parents are dictated to by the by the children.
Yeah. And, as I say, the world was changing in front of your eyes. You're thinking, what? It as I say, it didn't necessarily creep up, but it was competition.
Yeah.
And, at that time, Hornby were investing in some really super digital controller called 01, which allowed multiple train control all on the same track. Beforehand, it was just DC, so they all had to be on separate circuits. If they were two locos on the same track, they would all move off at the same time. Whereas digital, this was cutting edge. This was basically the first home computer. Really, I mean, it was a clever piece of kit.
Who was developing these things for you?
Well, there was a chap called Lou de Sá. He was a Portuguese chap, and they were using Texas Instruments, TMS 1000.
Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, and these were the people who had the calculator.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. These were the calculators that when I was in the shop, we borrowed this calculator because we needed. It was at the time when. New money was coming in, and we had to do an accurate stock take and all the rest of it. Beforehand, it was we got 20 of those. Now it was all done, and we did all this on the calculator. Then got to press the total, and the screen just melted away. Ran out of battery. So it was fun, but anyway, I digress. So by then,
So how did you tell your friend you were leaving?
It wasn't easy. It took me 2 or 3 days, pluck up the courage, explain the situation, and he couldn't have been nicer about
That's
it.
good.
Really, I mean, he wasn't.
And you stayed friends.
Yeah, oh yeah. Still, I still ring him up. He's still in business.
Good.
No, he's it's a good friendship. It is a good friendship. And of course, then the world's changing. The company called Dunby Convex Marks, which was, if you like, the holding company for Hornby and basically Hammond Morgan, they went into liquidation.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, we were being controlled by a receiver.
Yeah.
Which wasn't an easy time.
And how long had you been there at this stage?
About 2 years. Yeah.
And
It was in the second year.
And you're what? At your initial stage, you're out on the road.
Out on the road, enjoying it.
What was your first company car?
Well, the first company car was a Hillman Estate, which was one of the directors of Hammond Morgan's old car.
Right.
Because, as luck would have it, because it was going to be a Cortina 1.6 L, and it was going to be red. And but it had got held up at Dagenham or somewhere on the docks, either because the Ford were on strike or the docks were on strike.
Which was very unusual at the time.
Yeah, very, very unusual. And so I had to have this run around with this Hillman, and I put so many miles on it.
Yeah.
And it was a really bad winter, but I had a lot of scary moments with it because you're tearing from it's a big area and you're tearing from one call to another.
And what are you doing? You're going to shops and selling the product. And what you got? Full of your trains.
What? No. What you have? Briefcase. Nice new briefcase. It was nice. With my Casio calculator, and then you never walked into the shop with an empty hand.
Right.
So you would say, right, what do I want to sell? And because the company was sort of changing from, Hornby had bought Hammond Morgan, and obviously there was dead stock that went about.
Yeah.
So it could be some charges or something. You'd walk into the shop, and you would introduce yourself. Now, in those days, I smoked. Everybody smoked.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, put it on the counter. And and how's because they were your best friends, but your bestest friend was the person who paid your wages. So they were best friend, and you would have notes that the daughter was at university or whatever, and you would start the conversation. How's business? And they would offer them a cigarette. Take a cigarette. So you're getting in there. You'd have a cup of tea. You'd have a chat, and all the rest of it. And then you'd say, how things. There was a controller we had. Duets was probably the main controller we had, which was two control units in one. And so how are the duets? Because duets we are running low now on production. Have you got enough for Christmas? And oh no, but I better have another box. Yeah, so that was another 4. So you'd scratch the pad and you'd go through it. No, so it depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So, and you say, right, thanks very much. Okay, lovely. And they say, well, good. Oh, well, you're getting busy. I'll go. And they'd say, yeah, but what about that? Oh, yeah, nearly forgot about that. Not sure you'd be interested in this, but it's a charger for 2 volts or 6 volts or whatever. And I said, well, we're doing a bit of a deal on it. If you're interested, I'm not sure you're interested. Yeah, go on, I'll have a packet. You see, and that's how it worked. You and this was Stan. Stan was old school.
This was selling, wasn't it?
This was selling, and I'm not a sales. I am certainly not a salesman.
Well, you're a good talker.
So and that's part of it.
Yeah.
But I'd listen. Some of what Stan would say, you think, "Oh, do me a favour," but some of it you'd think, right, well, I can twist that so it works for me.
Yeah.
He did the. What was it? The 3 Ps, the 4 Ps. Product, preparation, and something else.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd have all these things.
Yeah,
and you
people
would
sold.
listen.
It was selling. Yeah.
And he was selling,
Yeah,
and he was selling. But you knew when not to sell. That was the thing.
But you had confidence in your product, so that made selling.
The product was, as I say, was bulletproof.
Yeah.
This was good quality product. I part of my induction when I went to Hammond Morgan was to actually work in the factory. I had a week in the factory where you did not touch a soldering iron until you passed the soldering test.
Yeah.
Which was lots of wires crisscrossing each other, and then you had to solder each of the joints, and then the lady on the line manager would come along and press hard, and if it broke, you didn't go anywhere near it.
No, it was
Now I'd learned soldering when I was in the model shop, so I wasn't too bad. But my mate who joined at the same time, he did have dramas. He couldn't do it. Poor old Clive couldn't manage it. But you had
a bit of flux.
Yeah, but you knew how the system. You knew how the product worked.
Yeah.
Because you'd built it.
Yeah.
Even down to transformers where you had E's and I's. These were metal strips that all came together, and then when they were locked together, you then dip them in this varnish, and then the wires were soldered on. That was the transformer. That was the thing that helped drop it from 220 down to it'd be about 20 volts AC, and that's so you knew how it went together. You knew the insides, and that was the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because you could talk knowledgeably, and it had a grip inside, so you couldn't pull the cable out. So one of my tricks was to swing this thing around my head, and it was a plastic one we had, and I mean it was good fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and because you do make friends. Yeah. And one of the things that happened when I moved over to Hornby, we'd be at a toy fair, and you'd have a couple come on who used to call on. I'd say, well, I'll get your rep for you. I'd say, oh no, can't you show us round?
Yeah.
Oh, can you show? Yeah. And that was nice.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you have friendships that last. And there's one shop in Cheltenham, and he was at one time possibly the second largest model retailer in the UK. Great shop. And he could have given me a hard time. Not a bit of it. Come in. Do you want a cup of tea? Oh yes, please, have a cup of tea. And you got to know him. And these are the people you didn't sell to. You say you got everything you want. Yeah. I tell you what, I better have some more duets, or give us a box of clippers or whatever. And they would always support you. So you would have, if you had a new line, for example, they say, yeah, go on, then we'll have that. And they were good. And these are the people.
These are your friendships.
These are the friendships, and these are the people. And I was telling you about that the exhibition I went to a couple of weeks ago, and at that table, I was with the man and his wife, and he takes the mickey. But while I was there, I was there for the bull.
Yeah.
He came over. Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a cup of tea?
Yeah.
Have you got enough? You got water? And this is lovely. And when I was at Hornby, he would ring up and he would say, "Are you going to be at such and such? Can you bring me such and such to the show?" And we would do that.
Were you selling into big stores then, like Selfridges?
Yeah.
Hamleys?
Oh yeah, I went to Selfridges, Mr. Peniston.
Right.
They were all named. Mr. Peniston wasn't his real name. In those days, they were named after places. Now, Peniston, obviously, up in Lancashire,
I
think it is. But then Harrods had Harrods.
Were they big sellers? Were
they in their time, yes.
Did you have like who would be your number one seller? Would they just sell more product than?
No, they would sell. They would have Hamleys, possibly out of the big ones, would be the biggest sellers because they sold the most train sets of that type. But no, we had, I used to go into Hamleys. And again, this was a guy, excuse me, this was a guy who was military. And Bob, what was his name? Bob, something like Bob King or something like that. And he was a guy, Hamleys, they're up there, aren't they? Mm. He could again given me a hard time. Couldn't have been nicer.
Yeah.
Really, well, what's new? So how's Stan? Because Stan used to call him, it would. These are the people you think, if you want anything, I can help you. I will do it for you.
Did you have any problems getting into those stores, or did they?
They
wanted your product.
they
wanted your product, though.
What you did, what we did. I was every Friday. My journey plan would be 2 weeks ahead. So on the Friday, I'd write out my journey plan for 2 weeks ahead.
Yeah.
Stan having the coming week's plan already in front of him. But I'd write it out, and then I would also write visitors cards. I'll be coming to see you on such and such a date, and that would be the same.
Just get you to sit a bit closer.
Sorry. And then, and it would be, I'll be calling you on the Tuesday or the Wednesday or whatever. And I did the same with Selfridges and Harrods and so on. And I would park the car if I was doing Selfridges. I'd park the car.
Was it easier parking then?
No, nightmare. But I would park in Cavendish Square. There was a car park there, underground car park. I'm not sure if it's still there. And of course, around then there was Cavendish Models I would call on. I would call on Selfridges. I would call on, what was it? There was another shop in one of the arcades down there, Hamblings. And, these were cool shops. But I would get into London probably 6:30 in the morning, park up, go and have a cup of tea, in a cafe just off Regent Street, and then do my walk around. Obviously, doing Harrods was different. Then get in the car and then go to Knightsbridge. But in those days, you could park round the back.
It was easier.
And it was easier. Yeah. Nowadays, it would be a blooming nightmare.
Yeah.
Absolute nightmare. Yeah. Actually, driving in London would be a nightmare. I mean, I don't know how people do it, to be honest.
Just about.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So you've been out selling, you've done that.
Did that, and then my marriage broke up, which was arguably down to me, I suppose. We drifted. The thing is, we drifted. It was work. We drifted apart. Yeah. We ended up wanting different things. I was enjoying what I was doing. And my wife then, she was thinking of doing other things as well. Yeah. So we basically drifted apart. Yeah, but it was, the guilt of me.
Still a tough time, isn't it?
I carried that guilt around for years and didn't actually realise it.
Yeah.
It's still, it is a big thing to say, because we'd been together for the best part of 14 years. We'd been married 7. And it's a big thing just to turn and say,
it's not working anymore.
It's not working anymore. And then, so it was not a good, not a good time in my life.
Roughly?
That would be round about, it was all falling apart, be round about 82, 83.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, would be.
And things were happening in the business.
Things were happening in the business. My brother, my elder brother, had 2. The elder brother, he had a business up in Sheffield, and of course I was looking for somewhere at weekends to go, and I'd go up to Sheffield with him. Actually, just thinking about it, I was awful because by then I'd moved back to my mother's, but I couldn't be in Northampton, so I would go up to see my brother. Sometimes I'd take my mum, to be fair. She was lovely, my mum. Anyway, and we were talking, and he said he's got this forklift truck business and handling, warehouse handling, that sort of thing. And he said, I could really do with some help. I've got a couple of salesmen, but they're not salesmen. He said they just sit around waiting for me to give them the leads. He said, I want somebody who can,
go out,
do it, and all the rest of it. And cut a long story short, I said, yeah, okay. I think I need a change.
Okay.
I need a change. By now, Hammett Morgan was, it was pretty clear it was going to close. A manufacturer was going to move to Margate, and things were changing. As I say, I needed, my life was changing. So my brother, right, he was over the moon. He got a car for me. It was a Cortina, but it was a GL. It got up, and it was the latest model, blue, and printed business cards for me. And so I wrote out my resignation. And it was decided to give it when Stan, who had moved from Hammett Morgan to Hornby, back to Hornby as part of this move. And I thought, right, they're going to have some sort of board meeting up at Hammett Morgan, so I'll give it to him then. So, in simple terms, when the opportunity arose, I gave him the letter, and it just so happened it was all the other directors were in the room, slightly uncomfortable. He read it. He then passed it to a chap called Paul Eady, who was Hornby's marketing director and was a director of Hammett Morgan, who then passed it to a chap called Keith Dunk. Now, Keith Dunk I had known, and he was a good guy. He's from Grimsby. Right. So I lived in Louth. So we had, we were both yellow bellies.
Bit of a connection.
Yeah, we had a connection. And they all read it, and Stan said, oh, that's a shame. I said, yeah, Stan, I know, but I think I do need to change, what's happening in my life. And he said, yeah, it's a shame, he said, because we wanted to offer you the job of brand manager at Hornby. So here you have, I've made a commitment to my brother.
Yeah.
I've been offered this job, which was, never even thought of, but it was a dream job. Didn't know anything about marketing, but I'd been offered this job. And I said, well, I'll have to have a think.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But I will let you know within 24 hours. So I got back. I was living in Northampton with my mother at the time. So I was driving backwards and forwards to Watford all the time. Anyway, so I rang my brother, told him the situation, and he said, well, you got to take the job.
Oh, God.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Simon, you can't not do it.
Yeah.
That's for you. I said, yes, Royce. Well, what about the car? He said, oh, don't worry, I'll sell that and get a profit. Which is exactly what he did. He was a good salesman.
Yeah.
He was a very good salesman. So
it's another twist, isn't it?
It's from
the letter to get you there to the letter that changed. You've got two letters there that have changed you.
It is. So and then really, I ended up at Margate one September morning.
You had been to Margate much?
I had been to Margate before with Hammett Morgan, because Hammett Morgan, as I say, were part of the Hornby sister company, but they had this thing called 01, and what Hammett Morgan were developing was basically a 01 on steroids. It was twin control, touch screen. It had a clock. It had a 24-hour clock. It had scale clock, etc. It was an amazing bit of kit, big hefty transformer, and so it took digital control to another level. So I had gone from Hammett Morgan to go up and see the inventor of the 01 and talk to them about it and get a feel, because I had been asked to write the instructions for it was called the HM5000, this digital controller. So I thought it best I'd better go and have it. And of course, I'd been up to Margate, and I remember I'd been staying at a hotel, having breakfast, and I was looking out over the sea, and I thought, and it was I think it was August time, and at that time, and I was thinking, God, it must be lovely to live here. Lovely to see the sea and all the rest of it. So yes, I'd been there, I'd come back, I'd written the instructions, made a lot of it up, which then was used to develop the product. So having accepted the job, I ended up in Margate in October. Could not have been fairer. The company offered to pay, because I said they knew my marital status, knew my situation. I said I was going to buy a house, and they said, yeah, fine, we'll do the solicitor's fees, any white goods you need, you've got them, your moving fees, anything like that, it's all there, it's all done, dusted. Until you find somewhere, we'll put you in a hotel. Wow. And, they could not
They must have valued you.
Yeah, probably. Well, yeah, it might be, yeah.
And they were going for a change themselves.
They were going through a change themselves, yes, because they were now heading towards being one of the first companies. This is Thatcher Britain, going into being one of the first companies that was going to be, what do they call it, bought by the management.
Oh, it was a management
buyout.
Oh, okay.
Which was going through that, and so. Really, I get to Margate, I don't really know what I'm doing, what to do, so I'm learning on the hoof.
So now this is a whole new change for you now.
This was a
new
massive change.
And now you're in Margate.
Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't like living in a hotel. I thought it was taking the mickey. I was able, because the hotel owned a flat, and I was able to get the flat at a good rate, so that helped Hornby. But I was determined to buy a house, and I had set the wheels in motion. I'd signed the deal one lunchtime, come back to the office, and there's all these people standing on the lawn, all the grass outside of Hornby, and I go in and I said to the chap I was sharing the office with, what's going on? He said, oh, Paul Eady, who was my boss then, wants to see you. Go up. He said, there's been some changes, Simon. We're going to have to make some people redundant. And I thought, oh, God, I've given up. Told my brother he can, I don't want to work for him. I've just signed a house, and now you're going to make me redundant. And then he quickly, if you could see the look on my face, said, no, you're all right, but we're having to,
make up for him.
Yeah, make a few people redundant and so on. And that's what was going on. That was the union holding their meeting.
Okay, should we take a break?